They started by denouncing the agreements. Otherwise, if we don't denounce the agreements, just saying that the bases leave, we haven't done anything. Because the problem lies in the colonial agreements, the defenses that have been signed since independence.
Is Ibrahim Traoré's life in danger? If you ask a political analyst, they might say the young captain who now leads Burkina Faso should never eat without a food tester, check under his car twice before getting in, and maybe, just maybe, sleep with one eye open. Why? Because when powerful men in Washington start whispering your name, and when your policies upset the world's biggest empires, the script is no longer just about politics. It becomes a thriller. And sometimes it ends in tragedy. Chapter 1. Who is Ibrahim Traoré? Born in 1988, Ibrahim Traoré is not just another African leader. He is young, bold, and not afraid to speak his mind. Before he got into politics, he had a military background and was known as a sharp and disciplined officer. But everything changed in 2022 when he led a coup and took down the president of Burkina Faso. Just like that, he became the country's leader in a time of chaos and danger. What made Traoré stand out wasn't just his military experience or that he became president through a coup. What really got people's attention was his age. At just 34 years old, he became one of the youngest leaders in Africa and even the world. But what really made him unique was his bold attitude, especially towards Western powers like the United States and France. Instead of following the same path many African leaders have taken, one that involves staying quiet and relying on help from powerful Western countries, Traoré spoke up. He spoke openly about the need for African countries to be truly free, to make their own decisions, and to use their own resources to build a better future for their people. He said it was time to end the years of foreign control, unfair deals, and political manipulation. Many people in Burkina Faso and across Africa felt inspired by this message. He famously said, "We are not anti-French, anti-American, or anti-anyone. We are pro-African." These few words spoke volumes. They meant that Traoré wasn't trying to start a fight with the West, but he also wasn't going to bow down to them. He was going to put Africa first, no matter who didn't like it. But the world doesn't always respond kindly to leaders who speak out like this, especially when they start making moves that threaten global interests. In no time, his words and actions started to worry leaders and policymakers across the Atlantic Ocean, especially in countries like the United States. In powerful places like Washington, D.C., questions started being asked. Who is this young man? Why is he pushing back so hard? And what should be done about him? For many, Traoré's rise was a sign of hope, a new beginning for African self-rule. But for others in powerful nations, he was seen as a challenge to their influence. And when someone challenges the way the world works, history has shown that the response can be swift, silent, and sometimes deadly. Chapter 2. Why the US is watching him closely. Recently, Traoré's name echoed through the chambers of the US Senate, not in praise, not in concern, but as a red flag. The kind of attention that no leader wants from the most powerful country in the world. During a tense and very serious Senate hearing, General Michael Langley, the top commander of the US Africa Command, stood up and made a bold statement. He didn't beat around the bush. He directly pointed to Traoré and made it clear. The United States government sees him as a growing problem, a threat, not just to Burkina Faso or West Africa, but to America's wider interests across the entire African continent. And what exactly is the US so worried about? In just a few sharp words: gold, power, and influence. According to General Langley, Captain Traoré is not just running his country like any normal leader. He claims Traoré is using Burkina Faso's enormous gold resources, not to build schools or hospitals, but to strengthen what Langley called a junta regime. That's a type of government where the military holds all the power and doesn't rely on fair elections or democracy. In other words, Langley is accusing Traoré of using the country's wealth to keep his grip on power without the people's full consent. But the accusations didn't end there. Langley went even further. He claimed that Traoré has formed close ties with two of America's biggest global competitors, China and Russia. These are countries that the US sees not just as economic rivals, but as serious political threats. By working more closely with them, Traoré is, in the eyes of the US, stepping into very dangerous territory. In today's tense world, where superpowers are always watching each other closely, this kind of alliance doesn't just raise eyebrows, it raises alarms. It's no longer just about politics or trade. It starts to sound like the early signs of a much larger power struggle. And sometimes, when the US says someone is aligning with their enemies, it's not long before that person finds themselves at the center of international pressure, or worse. So, when Traoré's name was brought up in the US Senate, it was not just a passing comment, it was a clear signal. The American government is paying close attention, and they're not happy with what they see. Chapter 3. China, Russia, and the new game in Africa. To understand why this is such a big deal, we have to zoom out. Africa is resource-rich. Gold, cobalt, lithium, oil, you name it, Africa has it. And the global superpowers all want a piece. China has already built a strong presence across the continent, from railroads to ports to military bases. Russia, too, has been offering weapons, mercenaries, and political support in exchange for influence. And now, Ibrahim Traoré has opened his doors wide to both of them. That's where the alarm bells in Washington start ringing. Chapter 4. The Belt, the Road, and the Fear in D.C. In a meeting with U.S. lawmakers, General Langley, who is a top U.S. military officer in charge of Africa, gave a serious warning. He said China and Russia are not just coming to Africa to take gold and other minerals. They are trying to gain more power. And this power could be a big problem for the United States. He talked about China's military base in a country called Djibouti in East Africa. This base is very big. It can hold China's biggest warships, and it's close enough to watch what US soldiers are doing in the area. This base is also used to gather secret information about the US military. But there's more. General Langley said China wants to build another base, this time on the west side of Africa, near the Atlantic Ocean. That's much closer to the United States. If that happens, he said, the US will have to change the way it protects itself. It would be a very serious situation. So what's really going on? Africa is turning into a place where big countries are fighting, not with guns, but with friendships and deals. China, Russia, and the United States all want to be Africa's best friends. They are fighting for control through trade, mining, and military support. Now here's the big point. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the leader of Burkina Faso, is not siding with the US. He's working with China and Russia. And for the US, that's a problem. They see him as someone who is helping their enemies. That's why the US might try to stop him or turn people against him. And that's why many people are now asking, is his life in danger because of these choices? Chapter 5. Is this really about Burkina Faso or power? Publicly, US officials talk about concern for the people of Burkina Faso. They say that foreign exploitation, especially by China, rarely benefits the locals. Instead, they argue, it enriches corrupt leaders and weakens democratic institutions. But many Africans don't buy that narrative. Online and on the streets, people are asking, is this really about helping Burkina Faso, or is this about keeping Africa under control? For decades, African countries have hosted Western military bases, followed Western economic models, and opened their markets to foreign companies. And yet, many remain poor, unstable, and heavily dependent. Now, leaders like Traoré are saying enough, and that's making the West very uncomfortable. Chapter 6. The mic drop response. In a rare and bold move, Burkina Faso's government fired back. They released a fiery statement rejecting all of General Langley's claims. They called his remarks frivolous, unfounded, and politically motivated. Traoré's administration insisted that all mining revenues are accounted for. They pointed to major investments in roads, schools, and clean water as proof that the country's resources are being used for the people. It was not just a response, it was a mic drop. A declaration of independence from the old playbook of silence and submission. They even went further, threatening to cancel military agreements and calling for an end to colonial-era treaties. This wasn't diplomacy. This was war talk. Political war. Chapter 7. History. Repeating itself? Here's where it gets chilling. People who follow African politics closely are seeing the same warning signs that led to past disasters. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi also stood up to the West. He challenged US and European influence, pushed for African unity, and even tried to launch a gold-backed currency to rival the dollar. What happened next? He was ousted and killed in a NATO-backed rebellion. His country has never recovered. Now, some fear that Traoré is walking the same path. Online, people are posting side-by-side images of Gaddafi and Traoré. The message is, we've seen this movie before. History is loading. Chapter 8. Protests, Pressure and Propaganda. Lately, protest videos have been showing up all over the internet. Some clips appear to be filmed in Paris, while others are clearly from the streets of Burkina Faso. In these videos, we see crowds shouting, holding signs, and marching through the streets. What are they angry about? That depends on who you ask. Some of the protesters are clearly against Ibrahim Traoré. They accuse him of being too extreme, too close to Russia and China, and too harsh with his military rule. On the other hand, there are also large groups of people standing in his support. They say he's a brave leader who is finally standing up for Africa and refusing to be controlled by outside powers. But what's interesting is how quickly these protests started after Traoré's hardline stance against foreign interference. Coincidence? Or are we watching the first moves of a carefully scripted takedown? Social media users are warning that this could be a repeat of what happened in Libya, in Sudan, in Haiti. First comes the demonization, then the protests, then the sudden collapse of leadership. And yet, Traoré seems unshaken. Chapter 9. Trump, the US, and a change of tactics. Now, this is where things start to get even more complicated and more dangerous. Former US President Donald Trump, who is now preparing for a possible comeback in the 2024 elections, has always been loud about one thing. He does not like how much influence China is gaining around the world, especially in Africa. During his time in office, Trump made it very clear that he saw China as a major threat to the US, and he tried to stop their growing power. One of his main targets was China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive project where China builds roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure in developing countries, including many African nations. In return, China gains more political and economic influence. Trump's team saw this as a danger to American power. They tried to push back. They talked a lot about offering better deals to African countries, investing in local development, and supporting democracy. But in reality, the US didn't offer much that could truly compete with China's big money and fast action. So while Trump made noise, China quietly kept expanding. Fast forward to today, and Trump is back in the spotlight. He's running again. His rallies are packed, his supporters are loud, and the world is watching. And if he wins the election in 2024, Africa might be pulled back into America's focus in a major way. Why? Because Trump doesn't just want to stop China. He wants to show strength. And for leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who are now working closely with China and Russia, that could mean real trouble. Some experts believe that if Trump gets back in the White House, his government might take even stronger and more aggressive steps to push back. We're not just talking about harsh words. We're talking about economic sanctions, which could block Burkina Faso from getting loans or trading with Western countries. We're talking about covert action, secretly supporting opposition groups, spreading negative news, or even funding protests to turn the people against Traoré. And in the most extreme case, we could even see military involvement, all in the name of protecting stability or fighting terrorism, phrases that have been used before to justify intervention in African countries. So, while Traoré might have strong support today, the road ahead could be rough, especially if Trump makes a comeback. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when big powers fight for control, smaller nations often pay the biggest price. Chapter 10. So, is Traoré safe? That's the question everyone is asking. And the truth is, nobody knows. Some say he's playing a dangerous game by standing up to global superpowers. Others believe he's doing exactly what a true leader should, putting his people first. But history is not on his side. Every time an African leader has tried to break the mold, Lumumba, Sankara, Gaddafi, they've been removed. Some peacefully, others violently. The stakes are high, the risks are real, and as long as Traoré continues to defy the world's most powerful nations, his name will stay on their radar, and perhaps on their hit list. Ibrahim Traoré is not perfect. No leader is. But in a world shaped by power and profit, he dares to ask a simple question. What if Africa chose its own path? That question, it seems, is dangerous. So what do you think? Is Captain Ibrahim Traoré a brave leader risking it all for his people? Or is he playing with fire by aligning with global powers that challenge the US? And most importantly, will he end up like Gaddafi? Or will he rewrite the script? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if you found this video eye-opening, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories from Africa and beyond. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, and stay curious.